If everybody would take a seat, we'll get going. We got a full agenda, so we want to make sure we cover it all. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Roy Williams. I'm President and CEO of the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber, and I want to thank you personally for joining us for what we believe is a great opportunity today to get to know some of our newest leaders on the Oklahoma City Council. Today's important discussion would not be possible without the generous support of our signature sponsor, Cox Business. So please help me welcome Shamal Metawadich, Sales Manager with Cox Business. Shamal.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shamal Metawadich with Cox Business, and we're very honored to be the signature sponsor here today. At Cox, we're very proud that one of our priorities is connecting our customers and communities to the things that they care about the most. So here are just a few examples. Since 2012, Cox Connect to Compete program has helped over 200,000 low-income families with children have access to the internet at a discounted rate so they're not at a disadvantage when it comes to learning. We also have the coxblue.com. This is a website that's packed with business news, information, and resources. Blue is about creating tangible value, an unparalleled user experience, and long-term sustainability among all levels of businesses. Please check this website out so you can see how it can help your business. And then we also have our Get Started program. This brings people together and supports entrepreneurship in a way that promotes success. The events with Get Started provides startups an opportunity to pitch their business ideas in front of a panel of experts. So far, more than $250,000 has been awarded to local startups. If you'd like more information about any of these services that Cox provides, please feel free to reach out to any of us over here. Well, today I'm very excited to hear from our newest members of the City Council on their priorities and vision for the future of our city. Thanks.
Thank you, Shamal. I'm also pleased to recognize our corporate sponsor, which is ADG PC. So let's thank them again. You really don't need to be told that it's an exciting time to be in Oklahoma City, especially as we see new leadership in almost every area and aspect of our community, and that certainly includes the Oklahoma City Council. In November of 2018, Councilwoman Nikki Nice was elected to serve as Ward 7 representative, and last month, Wards 2 and Ward 6 elected new leaders in Councilman-elect James Cooper and Councilwoman-elect JoBeth Hammond. These three individuals represent a new generation of leaders for our community, and we know they'll make their mark on our city in the years to come. So we thought that today was really the perfect time to get to know them a little bit better. We're excited to hear from each one of them about what their priorities for Oklahoma City's future and growth and success. But before we get into that discussion, we want you to enjoy lunch, and I'll be back shortly to introduce our panelists who will join me up here. Thank you. If you are still eating, feel free to continue, but we want to get started. We want to give adequate time to our guests today, as well as give adequate time to those of you who might have any questions of them. So be thinking about any questions that you might have. So as I said earlier, we're very fortunate to hear from the three newest members of the Oklahoma City Council. Their bios are printed in front of you, so I'm not going to read that to you. But please help me welcome Nikki Nice, Councilwoman for Ward 7, to the stage. James Cooper, Councilman-elect for Ward 2. And JoBeth Hammond, Councilwoman-elect for Ward 6. Thank all of you for being here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask all of the new council members to answer the same question for the first couple of questions, and then I have some specific questions for each one of them individually, and then we're going to open it up for your questions. So first thing I would request that each of you do, and we'll just start here and move down, and then we'll switch that around. But just tell us a little bit more about yourself, who you are, what your background is, and what inspired you to seek a position on the Oklahoma City Council. And Nikki, if you'll start.
Well, first of all, good afternoon, and I'm still eating my pie. But it was a short, long journey to get here to run for city council. But my background, I was born and raised in Ward 7, and I grew up in Millwood Public Schools. I transferred to Northeast High School, and I graduated from Northeast High School and went on to further my career, or education, at Langston University. So I hold a bachelor's in broadcast journalism from Langston University, and I was able to use that degree to be in the community. And with that, I was on radio for over 11 and a half years, and I also done local television for Fox 25, so I did that for almost 3 years. But being in the community, being civically minded and engaged, that started in high school with YLX, and that exposed me to some wonderful people that were doing some wonderful things, and my mentor, Mrs. Nancy Parrott, exposed me to a lot of things, and that just got me thinking about what's happening in Oklahoma City and how I can be a part as a young person, how I can leave my mark as a young person, and even for generations to come after me. So when the opportunity arose, because I had been involved and engaged in the community with even Loyal, and I've done leadership, Class 35, just being engaged was the opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to do this or I'm not. And obviously, when I decided to do this, 7 other people decided too. But we made it to the finish line, and I'm very grateful for that. But those are just a lot of things, just being engaged, civically minded. And I had a dear friend at the time that worked for the city that also saw my want to be engaged in the community and suggested that this was something that I do as well.
Thank you, Nikki. James, what inspired you, and tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So first, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you all today. Thanks everyone for your interest in our city and its Renaissance story. My story begins in Choctaw Nakoma Park schools. My mom's from Texarkana. If you ever meet her, you'll hear it in her voice. Don't worry about it. My dad is from Tom, Oklahoma, which is the southeast portion of the state, just outside of Idabel. If you can imagine, many of you are dressed in suits in here. I want you to imagine a 6'3" tall black cowboy wearing a suit with cowboy hat and boots, and that was my father. My mother is a retired registered nurse. She worked at St. Anthony's and the VA hospital in dialysis. And when they moved up here, they didn't know much about the history of Oklahoma City, but they decided that schools were the most important to them and that Nakoma Park Choctaw School District had a really good reputation. So they had a house built out on 15th and Anderson in Oakwood East. And I had a Midwest City address, went to Nakoma Park Elementary and junior high, and then graduated from Choctaw High School. So good luck remembering all that. I've always been a film person. Since I was a kid, I wanted to direct movies. I grew up on horror movies. So if you ever want to talk politics, go ahead, but if you want to talk movies, that's even more fun for me. So, weirdly enough, the reason why I decided to run for city council actually just takes me just up 23rd Street from Nakoma Park Choctaw Schools to Paseo, where I've lived since about 2010 when I finished graduate school in screen studies and English up at OSU. I moved down here and moved to the Paseo and started working as an adjunct film studies and English professor at Oklahoma City University and University of Central Oklahoma up in Edmond. And you might have heard about a year ago, I decided to take a walk with some other teachers. And I took the word walkout very seriously. I walked from my apartment built in the 1920s on sidewalks that would buckle, crack, and disappear into yards, and that's if they existed at all. And when I got to 23rd Street, that's when I saw a Renaissance story, right? You see the Drake, Pizzeria Gusto, you see the Tower Theater, which as a film person, you might imagine means quite a bit to me, Pony Boy. And then unfortunately, I started seeing payday loan after payday loan after payday loan, followed by a Family Dollar where there should be a grocery store. And then when I got to I-230 and I-235, into what is now Councilwoman Nice's ward, it just felt like a barrier, that interstate. Sidewalks were all but abandoned by that point. And it was almost like they didn't want us to get to the people's house. And no matter how much research my teaching colleagues, families, and students would bring to our friends at the state legislature on behalf of our support staff and our families, our neighborhoods. Here in the Metro, we have some wonderful elected representatives who understand the value of public education, and they had our backs the whole time. Unfortunately, some of the folk who weren't here in the Metro were like, well, here's a donut and some coffee, and thanks for coming. I support public education, but they weren't willing to pass the legislation that we needed to get the job done to help the people in need in our schools, in our neighborhoods, and their families. So when I would walk back and I would get to downtown Oklahoma City to Main Street, where every morning I have an espresso at Clarity Coffee before I head to the south side where I teach at Jefferson Middle School, I saw the rail in the ground. I would see stone by stone, brick by brick, the streetcar maintenance facility be built day by day. And I would see next door to me in the Paseo, Scratch and Buttermilk go up stone by stone, brick by brick. And I knew that, well, I don't know what the heck they're doing there at the state capitol, but I know here in the city we're doing something right. We're moving in the right direction. And that's where I got the idea to run for city council. And so then, I had been researching for a book project, a horror story based on some stuff that happened back here in the late 70s. You might recall the Sirloin Stockade murders, terrible tragedy. But that forced me to do a lot of research on the history of our city. And that's when I learned the history of Paseo. And that when G.A. Nichols had designed Paseo, the plan was, many of you already know this, that you'd walk out your front door, there'd be sidewalks waiting for you, street lights guiding your way to the basic needs of the individual, the churches, the cleaners, the parks with recreation, the schools, the grocery stores. And then in the event that those human needs weren't met in that neighborhood, in that district, the first commercial district outside of downtown, right? There was reliable public transportation connecting us back to the part of town that did meet those needs, back then downtown. And then I learned names on streets that actually meant something. Anton Klassen and John Chartel, they had built that reliable public transportation, a streetcar, that median right in the middle of Klassen and Robinson. And I thought, what if I ran for city council, and what if I took that original vision for our city, and what if I brought it into the 21st century? And that's why I ran. Oh, one more thing. G.A. Nichols, I found out, designed my hometown, Nakoma Park. Weird how that works.
Small world. Jo Beth.
Yeah, well, thank you all so much for having us today. So yeah, a little of my background. I'm maybe one of those people that our Renaissance has attracted to Oklahoma City. I didn't grow up here. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest and found my way back here through going to college at Oklahoma Baptist in Shawnee, and decided I was had enough of Oklahoma during my 4 years here, and then moved to Chicago for a few years to participate in a Service Corps program. I studied social work, so I was really interested in any sort of social services, and ended up working at a shelter for people experiencing homelessness. And when I was looking at what I was going to do after I kind of graduated from this program, I had been dating someone here and was like, well, maybe I could move back to Oklahoma. We'll see. So I came back for a few visits, and he brought me over here to Oklahoma City. I had sort of been based out of Shawnee my whole time in Oklahoma. And so when I would come over and visit friends that had moved here after college, I was like, oh, there's actually something going on here. So I ended up sort of just at the right time. The Mental Health Association Oklahoma was expanding to be in Oklahoma City. We originally were founded in Tulsa, and through some partnerships expanded to have some services here. And they opened their office right as I moved into town, and our office is downtown. I decided I wanted to live without a car. I had gotten so used to using public transit and just relying on my feet in Chicago that I thought, let's see if I can give it a try. Maybe a little naively, as I learned, the bus, it's 6 p.m. and the bus stopped running. I guess I'm walking home, or, on Sundays, just deciding that if the weather's bad, I'm not going anywhere. But I tried to sort of set up my life so that it would be as practical as possible. And as I worked downtown and was working, with folks in crisis, experiencing mental health crises, people experiencing homelessness, I just saw this great disconnect between the Oklahoma City that I was really attracted to and kind of what I saw on a day-to-day basis. So sort of similarly, I lobbied my elected officials and got to varying results. And so much of what my advocacy work had been was I would go to people who had no education or sort of context from how important mental health services are. And I would have to be educating them, and it was always felt like an uphill battle. So it just kind of occurred to me that, well, maybe if we had people who had the education already, sitting in those seats, we can maybe start at a different place and have a maybe more balanced conversation around how we grow as a city. So that was really what inspired me to run, and so I threw my hat in the ring.
Thank you, JoBeth. Okay, another question, same question for all of you, and we'll start out with James. What's your favorite thing about Oklahoma City?
Uh-oh.
Only one.
One. Oh, God. I would say the fact that in this moment we have Rodeo Cinema, Tower Cinema, or Tower Theater, you have Banquet Cinema, you have these independent movie theaters that are bringing films that, I'm gonna be honest, I wanted to move out of Oklahoma City growing up my whole life because we did not have those sort of films here. And that might sound inconsequential, but when you watch an art film or you watch something made in France or you watch a smaller budget film, it opens up your world to other people's lived experiences. And that is so important to my soul. And to have those theaters here now, in addition to Tinseltown and the stuff like that is my favorite thing, being able to go watch movies and talk about them afterwards over coffee or whiskey, whatever.
Or both. JoBeth, your favorite thing?
I guess my favorite thing isn't so much a maybe physical or built thing, but the thing that I always talk about why I chose to come back, or the thing that I really love about Oklahoma in general, is, and this sounds like such a cliche thing, but really it's the people, because, and it's really more than just like, oh, we're so nice or we're so helpful, but really there's this spirit of kind of like, well, come along, like you see a problem or you see something you want changed, like, well, let's come along and like do that together. So I think that's really the thing that has kept me here, for sure.
Thank you. Nikki, your favorite thing?
I'm like JoBeth, I say people, but I say the connection, because we are literally 1 or 2 phone calls away from someone else. And that's the one thing that I love about our community. It's like, do you know so-and-so? It's like, no, but I know somebody that does. And then you have that immediate connection. And that's one of the things I found, just having that connection. And as I was going to college, having these different jobs, I worked at Starbucks for almost 8 years. And it's funny to me now, in this role, I see a lot of the people that I served, and they are developers, and they were doing these things all along, and they were my customers. So again, it's just that connection that you have to the community, and this is really a big, small city.
Great, thank you. Another question I want all of you to answer, and starting out with JoBeth, what do you think is the biggest opportunity on Oklahoma City's horizon?
Gosh, man, you had to start with me on this one. I've been thinking about this, and And honestly, I think really we sit at a place of such possibility, and I think a conversation that I constantly had during my campaign, and then I know a lot of other people have been having in the community is, we've been doing all this really wonderful stuff that is attracting people to Oklahoma City. But the opportunity of what can we do to keep people here? What can we do to increase the quality of life for people who have been here and invested in Oklahoma City for 20, 30, 40 years when it wasn't such an attractive place to be? So I think just the opportunity of just kind of where we are in this moment and kind of seizing the collaborative spirit is where I see a lot of opportunity.
Thank you, Nikki. Biggest opportunity?
Our biggest opportunity, I'll say, is still connection. We still have opportunities where we can better connect not only our wards, but that also connects our cities. We need better opportunities connecting our neighborhoods. Also, as he was talking about the sidewalks with public transit, there's so many disconnects when you have people that will come into certain parts of different communities and immediately leave. We need people to stay. We want you to come enjoy that experience. We want you to not just drive out of Northeast Oklahoma City after you eat. We want you to not just drive out of the Adventure District. We want you to see what else is around. We want to also, again, just making sure that Oklahoma City understand, even though it's a ward or it's Northeast Oklahoma City or it's the southeast side, it's still Oklahoma City. And we have to make sure we are staying engaged and caring for one another when it comes to that.
Great. James, other than more theaters, what's the biggest opportunity?
Look, there's a lot of business folk in this room. You're not going to oversaturate the market with movie theaters. Building on connectivity and our city founders' original vision, I think it's public transportation, and I believe that to my dying breath. I really am that passionate about public transportation. I had the honor of serving on COTPA with our new city manager, Craig Freeman. Councilman Greenmill's not here, but we have, many of you might know this, but we have 49 buses right now that serve all 621 square miles of the city. That's why Monday through Fridays, they run every 30 minutes. That's why on Saturdays and Sundays, they run every hour. And I, along with COTPA and Embark and our recent city manager, Jim Couch, we were able to get a Sunday bus service, but here's the bad news with that. You miss the bus on Sunday, and by the way, we have not had Sunday bus service since 1964-65, the Voting Rights and Civil Rights Act. You miss the bus on a Sunday, and your barista job or your bartending job or your serving job or your retail job, it's on the line. It's on the line. I believe that this is our moment to honor our local history by reconnecting every single neighborhood, reconnecting every single one of our diverse historic districts with buses that run every 15 minutes until 3 o'clock in the morning so that people who need to get to work can get to work. People who need to get to the doctor or the pharmacy can get to the doctor or the pharmacy. People who need to get to church can get to church. People who need to get to parks and recreation can do that. Our kids need after-school activities, but they also need a way to get there. And those sidewalks are how we get them there. It is the vision that G.A. Nichols had in mind when he designed our first historic commercial district outside of downtown. I didn't pull this idea out of nowhere. And so I think our biggest opportunity is to build what we've already done when we put the streetcar in place, when you all made MAPS 3 a reality. And you're already seeing the economic growth around Midtown, Bricktown, and downtown. I was listening to an article, KGOU, and they were talking about this, the economic development that has happened around those 3 districts already. Imagine what would happen if someone could go hang out in the Adventure District, right? Hop on a bus and go chill, have some ice cream in the plaza, leave the plaza, go hang out in Capitol Hill, play some soccer. This is our opportunity to finish what we started 25 years ago, and quite frankly, 100 years ago.
Thanks, James. I only have 2 more questions for all of you, and then we're going to get a little more specific. But the next is, what's the biggest challenge? So, Nikki, what's the biggest challenge you see in Oklahoma City?
Again, it has to be with connection, but I want to be specific for Ward 7 if I can. There's a huge challenge, and there's a challenge of economic growth. There's a challenge of also job opportunities. There's a challenge of affordable housing, and when we're looking at the different things that take place in Ward 7, again, we're talking about the Adventure District, we're talking about Bricktown, we're talking about Deep Deuce, we're talking about even Innovation District. All of those districts are within Northeast Oklahoma, within Ward 7, but we also have opportunities with about 6 active TIFs that are there. We also have opportunity zones. So this is a very active ward. So there's no reason why we should not have economic development within it. But at the same time, we have to make sure that the community is not left behind in the process. So that's where I have to work to make sure that the community is understanding what's going on, they understand the process of what's going on, and they are also understanding how local government works, how we can all work together to get that done. So just all of those things together, and I think those are also incorporated when we're talking specifically about Ward 7. That also has a lot to do with the city of Oklahoma City too. But again, making sure we're still telling the story, as even James said, of Deep Deuce, of Bricktown, of the historic areas that belong to African Americans, and how they were restricted at one time to a certain part of Oklahoma City. We should not be ashamed to tell those stories, because although we have come a long way, we have to make sure we're recognizing history along the way when it comes to it.
Great, thank you. James, biggest challenge?
Continuing the work that the chamber and the business community and people in mental health and people from the ACLU onward have made when it comes to criminal justice reform. That's our biggest challenge. I think we got to continue carrying that torch. And by that I mean we have got to make sure that those buses are running not just for people to get to work, but the people who are caught up in the criminal justice system, when they miss those appointments, that's their lives now, right? So we can finish what you all started in this room at criminal justice reform by making sure those neighborhoods are walkable, by making sure they're connected with reliable public transportation, by making sure we're connecting them to mental health services, addiction services, substance abuse, domestic violence, what you're already doing at Palomar. Like, I think that's what excites me so much about this moment, is that I think our challenges are opportunities. And you all have already laid the blueprint for how to do this. We just have to keep going. I mean, when you have people from Clay Bennett to the ACLU agreeing, you know what I mean? When you have some of your biggest business leaders agreeing with people in nonprofits, that's huge, and that's that connectivity too. I think this is a moment to connect our people to the vital services that they're gonna need to be full, whole, happy, productive, contributing members to our society. To quote Clay Bennett, we have no expendable Oklahomans. So that's how I feel about that.
Thank you. Jo Beth, biggest opportunity, or challenge rather?
Yeah, I think kind of touching back on what Councilman Nice mentioned, I really, from really looking at things from the affordable housing perspective, but then also just from knocking a lot of doors and being in all the different neighborhoods of Ward 6, I really feel like gentrification is really kind of top of mind for me as far as a challenge for Oklahoma City. Just because we know that as, you know, we do become a more attractive place to live for particularly, you know, I'm sort of like the picture of what gentrification is, you know, you have these young people who want to get on a bike and go to your coffee shop or your brewery. It has unintended consequences of creating that inequity of rising property values that folks who have rented can't keep up with. They don't have necessarily the ownership to be able to stay in certain neighborhoods. So I think the challenge is really how do we grow equitably? How do we make sure that, the people who have been investing in our city through, working in the service industry, working at our hospitals and, working at the jail, folks who are, blue collar working class folks can still, they've been investing in the city because they didn't have an opportunity to move out to the suburbs. They didn't have that avenue, and so they've experienced the city. I've talked to especially on the south side, I've talked to so many folks who've lived in their neighborhood since it was built. They've lived there for 30, 40 years, and as development moves to, kind of out from the core, we really need to make sure that we're honoring the people who have really had that investment in our city, even if it looks different from the sort of what you might typically think of as investment. So, and I just really echo what Councilwoman Nye said, that I think there are ways we can do that as a whole community to make sure that we're keeping wealth within our communities and growing in a way that really benefits all of us.
Thank you. Okay, last question for all of you, then I'll get specific, and James, you can be the first one. Elephant in the room's MAPS 4. You're going to be a part of the council that votes on what goes to the voters. What's the one transformational project that you're going to advocate for and that you think should be considered as part of the final package?
God, I hope you say the one that I'm not going to say.
Okay, well, I might say it, so it's fine.
Oh, Lord help me. I want to double the bus fleet. I want 49 more buses, and we've got to figure out an operations and maintenance cost way to do this as well. Like, got to make sure that we are not just passing on those costs to our kids and our grandkids and their grandkids, but we've got to make sure that we understand that doubling the bus fleet is an investment in economic growth. Imagine what happens when you have a permanent bus line that's just going up and down like the BRT is going to do on Classen. What is that going to say to developers, right? What is that going to say to them? And then when you have people riding that bus who may have never thought about riding a bus before, these are your choice riders, right? People who look like us on this stage, right? Who say, you know what, I'm going to leave the car parked today. I'm going to, take Councilman Cooper up on his idea of going to the plaza for ice cream and going to the Adventure District for a movie or whatever. They're spending money. That's increasing sales tax. That helps our city. Let's make it a chant. I just really think this is something that the city's ready for. You saw in the GEO bond, transportation passed with like 60-something% of the vote. The streetcar was one of the most popular things. And even when it's controversial because people want it expanded to their parts of town. So transportation.
So from now on, we can refer to you as the bus guy?
I'll take it.
Well, I'm gonna take up the one that I was like, between myself and James, we probably have two that will just kind of go back and forth. So I'm assuming that the other one James would also talk about is sidewalks. I recently finished reading Boomtown, and the interesting thing that I hadn't really ever really locked onto about the first maps was that it was the city saying, we see a need that we've disinvested in these things. We had urban renewal that we had some grand plans that didn't pan out, and we need to reverse that trend. So, and the same thing with, we look back at the 50s, 60s, and 70s, we developed a lot of neighborhoods thinking we didn't need sidewalks, that everyone was gonna have a car and we're gonna be zooming around and have our flying cars by 2020, that we're not gonna need those. And I see an opportunity there for us to say, there's this need that we disinvested in this crucial aspect of connectivity for decades. So I think sidewalks is I'm the sidewalk lady, I guess.
You can be that. Nikki, what do you want to be? What's the transformational project you have in mind?
Housing for working families, yes. Affordable housing for working families. So I'll be the housing lady because it's important to make sure that we are creating, as we've all been talking about, the wealth for our generations to come, but we have to make sure that they have the opportunities available to the community and they are able to access all of those opportunities as far as workforce and being able to live in areas where they won't be shut out, they will be accepted, and the community can relic and see what's going on and mimic that same opportunity as well.
Good, thank you. We'll give you that name.
Thank you.
So I want to ask each one of you one specific question, and then we're going to open it up. Jo Beth, I'm going to start with you down there. Your background, as you already have told everyone, is in mental health education, and mental health and substance use disorders impact our entire society, especially our criminal justice system and our education system. So what improvements would you like to see in Oklahoma City's mental health outcomes?
Yeah, gosh, how much time do we have, I guess? I think
Bus guide takes over.
Yeah, the big challenge that I really see, and I think most mental health advocates would point out, that we have some really amazing services in Oklahoma City. We talk about, this connectivity, and, we have amazing partnerships throughout the city of different nonprofits, business groups that recognize the need. And I think I've heard Commissioner Terry White say dozens of times that, we have some of the best mental health services in the country. Our problem is that the door to get into those services is so narrow, because of ability to pay, because of the way that we've sort of disinvested from funding a lot of those services for people who don't have, workplace insurance or things like that, or sometimes workplace insurance doesn't cover mental health, which is a whole other soapbox I could get on. So I think I'd really like to see us find ways to expand that door, to widen that door for people to get in, specifically to really crisis services. We have a few crisis centers that we can send people to in the metro, but we only have so many beds, and their job really is stabilization. So we kind of have this revolving door of folks who, because they can't get into those, they can't get through that door to the preventative services, we're spending all of this money on the back end to try to stabilize them, and then we're just sending them right back out into the community for family members, police, fire, all of the community to have to figure out how to help them. So I'd really like to see us find ways to expand that door.
Thank you. Nikki, in the last few months representing Ward 7, you've focused and encouraged economic development for your ward. Can you talk a little bit about what your approach is to that and what you've sort of learned in the process of trying to enhance economic development in your ward?
Well, the one thing I've learned is not overnight. And I think just being involved and engaged in the community prior, we expect, being a citizen, you expect them to happen. And that's the unfortunate part of the economic development. But the one thing that I have found is that a lot of our community, we don't know the process. And that's one of the things that I've been able to have a community forum, so people in the community understand, what a TIF is, how it works, what these opportunity zones are. Of course, we have urban renewal that's in the community as well. What are all of these things that are happening around us? The Strong Neighborhood Initiative. How can we be engaged as a community to make sure that it's working for us? And even the main one is the grocery store. We've been having a conversation about an adequate grocery store in the since 1993. 1993. And we still don't have one. So just the conversation to be had about how to get one and how to make sure that the community is able to benefit from it and people to stay in Ward 7. And that's the main thing, creating that economic development piece to where when we have things that are happening in the Adventure District, we don't want people to leave the ward. We want them to stay in Oklahoma City. We want them to stay in the area. We don't want them to jump off the highway and then have to come back in order to receive whatever those amenities are as far as that economic development is concerned. So there's been a lot of things to learn as far as economic development, and also being able to connect the community to those same things that I've been learning along the way.
Good, thank you. So I had said when I started talking, I was only going to ask all of you to answer 5 questions, but I really meant 6. So this is the 6th question I'm going to add in. All of you represent a somewhat younger generation of leaders coming into our community. How do you suggest that our city increase the engagement of people like you, the younger generation, and especially when it comes to increasing voter turnout? James, start with you.
You have to knock their doors. You have to knock their doors. As a candidate, you have to go out there and knock their doors. I have to say this 1,000 times. And we cannot keep knocking the doors of the same voters over and over and over and over again, because we'll get the same results. So that's the first thing I would say. Number 2, I would say that the candidate running matters and the message matters, right? When I talk about connectivity, when I'm listening to both of them talk about connectivity, I imagine my friends, the ones who are working as baristas and bartenders and servers and in the service industry, who are getting priced out of places like Jefferson Park or Paseo because the rents are $775 a month now, $800. And if that doesn't seem like a lot to you, I want to tell you how much money I made before the teacher walkout with 2 master's degrees and a bachelor's. I made $35,000 a year. My colleagues up and down the hallways from me were making $31,000, $32,000, and here's the major difference: they have children. Okay? So this is not just the service industry. These are our teachers, and even with that $6,000 raise, that struggle's still quite real. So young people, a lot of your teachers are young people, they want to hear someone speak to that. They want to hear someone speak to the affordable housing concerns. They want to hear someone speak to the mental health concerns, because a lot of us have it. You know, we can't keep dismissing people when they throw out words like anxiety and depression, bipolar. We can't just lob out words like crazy. That's not the right word. Young people want to know that the people representing them, whether it's at City Hall, state legislatures, in the White House, Senate, wherever, are actually listening to their concerns. That's what they want. And that's not my opinion. That's what they told me when I would ask them at the doors. I always ask, what are your concerns for your neighborhood, your hopes for our city? And they were, A, thrilled someone was knocking their door. They were shocked. B, to Nikki's point about process, they were like, well, what does city council do? I don't know. No one's told me before. And that's an education problem too in our K through 12 schools. Somewhere along the way, we have dropped the ball when we are only requiring American federal government classes in the 9th grade, 1 year of Oklahoma history. We have got to have more pride in our state than 1 year of Oklahoma history, everybody. Why not have Boomtown be required reading? Meet these kids where they are. I promise you, start talking to them about the thunder, you have their attention, and then weave that into the land run the way that Sam Anderson does.
I don't know how that could happen, but that sounds fun.
Ask Sam for an abridged K through 12 approved version. I don't care, but things are off, everybody. This is not right, and that the young people are disengaged because somewhere along the way we stopped engaging them in K through 12 education. We stopped connecting what they're learning in their classrooms to everyday life, and so now all they do are worksheets and standardized tests, and they hate it. And we've got to stop doing this. This has got to stop. So yeah, you go knock their doors, you go ask them what they want, and they're going to tell you what I just said, and then you elect people like us to go out there and work with the good people who've already been elected to fix it.
Jo Beth, your thoughts of engagement of the younger generation and also increasing voter turnout?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, pretty much everything James said, I would very much echo. Part of me was inspired to run by Commissioner Carrie Blumert over there. And I think if anyone knows anything about Commissioner Blumert's campaign, was that she knocked tens of thousands of doors. And I was like, is that really what works? I guess that works. Just because meeting people where they are is, and like you said, reaching out to people who haven't historically been felt spoken to. And so, knocking doors, talking to people where they are, and talking about issues that matter are all things that I think would engage, and I've sort of always been type A overachiever, so I'm always like, even as an 18-year-old, I was like, okay, I bought my lottery ticket, now I go register to vote. But I know I'm sort of an anomaly for my age, so I think, making sure that we're speaking to the issues that matter and not shying away from the really hard parts of the conversations, things like gentrification, like systemic disinvestment in parts of our city, because, I know for myself, and I think, the typical stereotype of millennials is that our BS meter is up here. Like, we know if you're trying to pull one over on us, because we've been advertised to our whole lives. So we read corny, we read, not authentic. So just being honest about our history and about where we've been to make sure that we're not repeating those mistakes is, I think, a way to catch people who before have just said, well, that's not for me because it's just the same old, same old.
Nikki, your thoughts of engaging the younger generation and also increasing voter turnout?
Well, I agree with everyone, obviously knocking doors, and Commissioner Blumert knocked on mine. But we have to meet the young people where they are. So we have to be active as far as educating them on why it's important to vote in the first place. Even in some of our, for the African American communities, we have to educate them on the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, all of those things, and even women, obviously we're celebrating 100 years of women gaining the right to vote. So all of those things we have to educate. We have to, again, meet people where they are and let them know why it's important to be engaged. But also, we all have our social media platforms that we use, and I think that has been a tremendous thing that the young people pay attention to. And not just young people now, you have a lot of older people, more seasoned, that will pay attention to the social media aspect and what's going on and staying engaged that way. So as long as you're staying engaged, I think that is what brings attention to what you are doing and also educates the young people along the way.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you all for answering my questions. Now let's get to the hard ones. That's you guys. Who has a question? Yeah, hold up your hand and our staff will get you a microphone.
Hello, my name is Ruth Veals, and I'm coming from an education perspective. We all know that people move into cities in places where there's a quality of education that is going on. We know that they move out when it's not. One of the things, and with Nikki being in District 7, which is also in the district that I serve, that we know that even with the recent plan that we've had, is that lots of schools and lots of community people were concerned as far as the reason why that schools were being closed. And some of the reasons were because that in District 7, that lots of the families have moved out of that area. So it left our schools with underpopulated schools. And so I would like to know, what is your take on the importance of having a partnership with the district in order to make sure that every student have a quality of education, because we know that education not only does it affect a student's learning, but it also affects economics. And so what's your take on a collaboration or a partnership with the district that's within your districts?
Well, I can start. Obviously, it's very important that we have that relationship, but it's very time when you have the conversation, when you have schools that are in the district or in Ward 7, when you have a continued conversation with years saying these schools are scheduled to be shut down, these schools are scheduled to close, therefore, you do have families that leave out of that community because they don't know what's going to happen. And then you're left, as far as the community is concerned, how do you stabilize that community without that school being there? And a lot of the communities that are within Ward 7, those communities were built around that school. So when that school closes, what happens to the community? So it's very important that we have that bond and that relationship, but it's also important, and one of the things that on my platform, which we're still working with, is to make sure we're getting more before and after school programs in our community centers to make sure at least those young people have an opportunity at education. We can get mentors to come back to the community, but it's really about our neighborhoods, making sure we are investing in our village, because it was a village that raised me. So it takes our village to make sure that we are connecting, we are educating, and we are caring for our families and our neighbors and our children.
I would love Oklahoma City to say nationally that we are going to be #1 in education. There is no reason why we should not say this. There is research out there right now. I started looking at it the week that Pathways was announced. Stanford's, and I mentioned this with the chamber yesterday when I met with them, Stanford's economic team has done research. And the research says that every year, and many of you already know this, but we need to get this into our DNA, because it is how we seize our Renaissance story, run with it, invest in our neighborhoods, invest in education, invest in our future. They say that every year a kid spends in a better environment, teen pregnancy goes down, college chances go up. They earn more over their lifetime. They have more stable families. The neighborhoods not associated with those better environments are more associated with segregation, a lack of social cohesion, single parent families, and income inequality. So when you've heard the three of us up here say our vision, each of us housing, sidewalks, transportation, that's the better environment. That's the walkable neighborhood that G.A. Nichols designed for us 100 years ago. That's the vision that we have got to bring right now, more than ever with Pathways happening. We have got to invest in our neighborhoods and make sure that they are each walkable with their own character, where we've reached out to the people who live in those neighborhoods and asked them, what makes your neighborhood unique? What makes your park unique? What does a mural look like over here? What does Clara Looper Corridor actually look like as opposed to just a sign? Why isn't it a mural of those kids and Clara walking, painted on that tunnel behind the Capitol building that truly honors our history? Why not? Why not in this moment where everyone keeps throwing around this word Renaissance, we actually teach the Renaissance to everybody? I'm dead serious. I've been thinking about this. I've been watching this PBS documentary. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Show it to the kids. It's right there. Why don't we teach them about Socrates? Why don't we teach them about Gilgamesh? Why don't we tell them that the Hebrew Bible was the first book ever written? Why don't we tell them about the Holy Bible? Why don't we talk about the Quran? Why don't we talk about all the different world religions? Why are we so afraid of our past? Why are we so afraid of the fact that in Deep Deuce, we invented jazz during the horrors of segregation? Tell that story. Make it a chant. It is. I'm sorry, guys. It blows my mind that we have done this for decades. When we did the busing back in 1971, and as you all know by now, I am the first biracial or black person to serve on city council outside of Ward 7. Why did we not invest in those neighborhoods back in 1971 with the finger plan as we bused those kids to those schools? Who cares? It's done. Let's do it now. Let's do it right now. This is the moment to do it. We have maps staring us in the face. This is so important that we do this. So many people at the doors told me schools and streets, schools and streets, schools and streets. I talked to 2,000 people out of the 4,000 people I knocked their doors, and I'm telling you, schools and streets matter to them. Let's do something about it.
And if I may add, we're talking about the schools and just the knowledge and the history of even those schools. One of those schools that's scheduled to close I want to talk about is Edwards Elementary School, and it's on about 10th and Grand. And this school was built in the 1930s, and maybe not this particular school now, they may have added to it, but the school was donated. The land was donated by the Edwards family because it's an Edwards addition. So that's what I'm talking about when we have communities built around this school. And this same family donated the land for the first African American hospital, which was Edwards Memorial Hospital on 16th and Grand, which is now Edwards Redeemer Nursing Home. So that's the history. Edwards Park, they donated the land for Edwards Park. I mean, so we had, even in Dungee, we had some land donated for schools and things that happened and took place for those educational opportunities. And as we're talking about this finger plan, it came out of Northeast High School because Northeast High School, it was segregated. And Dr. A.L. Dow, who was the first elected, he wasn't the first to serve Ward 7, but the first elected African American to serve, his son wanted those opportunities to go to Northeast High School, so he's the one who sued the Oklahoma City Public Schools for his son to be able to attend that school. So those are things we're talking about when it comes to the history of these schools, and even names being erased and those schools being shut down or closed. And Parker Elementary, which is Green Pastures Elementary, that was named after someone, and that school is scheduled to close. So again, these schools were built with communities in mind. So what happens to the community after those schools leave is the problem.
We got to swoop in there. If these are going to be closed buildings, then they need to be, as you all are already talking with the chamber and the school district, the compact, then we got to swoop in there and we got to provide those services that Councilwoman-elect JoBeth is talking about. Like, make them still whole for the people to serve those communities. And I just see this as an opportunity to do it. And as you can tell, I'm a bit passionate with both of them.
Yeah, I think there's a little passion. We have time for one more question. Who's got the burning question? Surely somebody's got it. Right here.
Oh.
He's a bus guy, too.
Bus guy. My question is to Nikki and JoBeth. When you're having fun, what's your favorite place to go in Oklahoma City?
Wow.
Oh boy.
There's so many. I don't know. You know, just the community that I was raised in, it to me, that's the best place to be because it tells a story, it tells history. Me to understand where I've come from and to also be able to tell my story. But to me, I can say any place in Oklahoma City because this is a place where I was born in, this is a place I was raised in, this is a place that has made me into the young woman that I am today. So any place I feel in Oklahoma City is my favorite place. And I'm so humbled for the opportunity to serve Ward 7 because I learned so much more about Ward 7 and I learned so much more about Oklahoma City as the days continue. And also the staff with the City of Oklahoma City and how city government works. Again, I don't know the intricacies that happen with city government, but to be able to relay those messages to the people that I serve and all of those people that voted for me and those that didn't but just live in the community, it means so much. So every part of the city, I can't deny. And I rode the bus last Sunday and we did some giveaways on Route 22. And at 9:30 in the morning, that bus was booming. That just tells you just of the life that is in Oklahoma City. It just tells you about how lively a lot of our areas are. So again, every part of the city, because I discover something new about it every day.
I will give the chance to plug my favorite place in Oklahoma City is Commonwealth Urban Farms. So I spend most of my week at a computer or behind a phone. You know, we all kind of like are tied to all of our technological devices. And but every Saturday morning for the last 4.5 years since I moved here, I've been volunteering at an urban farm that's just north of the Paseo. It's just off of 31st and Western. You would never know it's there. So literally turned on 31st off of right off of Western, and you'll run into it. But it's a group of people who have lived there since the 80s and decided that they wanted to find a way to create a more sustainable food system in Oklahoma City. So they started a farm. And it's just an amazing, I think, testament to that spirit of I don't see something that I want to see. So let's get our neighbors together and start digging, essentially. So.
James, you want to share which theater?
No, I do not, sir. Trying to get me in trouble. No.
No favorite place?
Oh, favorite place. Okay, I didn't want to do the theater thing though.
No.
I would say our coffee shops. I really would. I know that sounds like the most hipster thing in the world to say.
You saved me from saying it, so it's fine.
But whether it's, Elemental Coffee, whether it's Clarity, whether it's Class and Coffee, Holy Rollers, Leaf and Bean, it's so fun to float between those places if you haven't had a chance to have conversation. I mean, the conversations that we're having up here right now, this is what a coffee shop is to me. Like, you get to sit and you're like, oh, how could we do this part of the city? And then you start talking about, well, where's your favorite theater and where's your favorite park, and which bus route do you like and not like and why, and these sorts of things. And I mean, our coffee shops, they are, Laura Massonaut somewhere in here. I think they call them the third home, third place. Is it something like third place? And it really feels like that for me. It's like I have my home, my apartment with my cat, and then I have my work, the middle school classroom, and then I get the coffee shop where, quite frankly, many of those people have become kind of second family to me.
Great questions. Help me thank the panel. So I know I speak on everyone here and on the chamber and the business community when I say we're really excited to work with you guys. We're really enthused about y'all's enthusiasm, and we want to be a part of that too. I also want to thank our signature sponsor, Cox Business, and corporate sponsor, ADG PC, for their participation. Before we adjourn, though, I want to tell you something important. I want to let you know about a new chamber event that's designed to help small businesses succeed. It is called Enlighten. It's held on the first Friday of each month at Walker Terrace. In April, attendees will learn the steps they need to take to get expansion financing from commercial lenders. So you can learn more about that at okcchamber.com/finance. We also hope you'll join us next month for our April forum, which will feature an in-depth discussion with our new Secretary of Commerce, Sean Copeland, and our new Executive Director of the Oklahoma Department of Commerce, Brent Kissling, about the state's approach to economic development and how we can make sure we're successful at attracting and retaining business. You can register at okcchamber.com/April forum. Thank all of you for being here. We are adjourned.